All right, y'all, let's go ahead and dive in. If this is your first time listening or if you're watching on YouTube, my name is Chad. I'm the host of the Act First show, and we have a simple message. We help high-ticket closers and coaches make sales simple. All right, let's get into it. So literally just a couple of days ago, if today is Monday, yeah, it was about a week ago. Yes, last weekend, not this weekend, but last weekend. Jeez. God, time is freaking flying by. I'm having a hard time of tracking the timeline here. But yeah, it was a week ago. So about 7 to 8 days ago, I spent $10,000 to go to Andy Elliott's event. Now, it was really fucking sick. All right, so this was at Andy Elliott's, the Elliott Group's headquarters. So we actually went to their headquarters. That's where they host their event. And before I actually get into the content, and just so you guys know, just to lay the framework here, what we're going to be talking about is, like I said, I spent $10,000 to go to this event, and I'm going to give you guys the 5 biggest takeaways that I had from things that they said, and then 5 observations I had from being there. So 5 additional things that I learned, not necessarily from what they said, but from me actually, just observing and being an observer there. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, you're probably like, Chad, what the hell are you wearing? This is, my grandma turned 90 years old this year, and all of the cousins bought these t-shirts. And obviously I cut the sleeves, I cut the neck out just because I wanted to make it like a lounge/gym tank. But it says Granny Caroline's 90th birthday bash, and then on the back it says Team Abuela, and it has the whole family's name there. So if you're wondering what the hell this is, technically I purchased this, but I didn't wear it for style. This is more just comfort. I just like wearing cutoff tank tops. Yeah, that's just who I am. All right, anyways, that's not why you're here. You're here to hear the content. So yeah, like I said, before I get into the actual content, I just wanted to say, so I went into this a little bit skeptical. Obviously, I spent $10,000 and that's a lot of money. But, I've been to events before, and a lot of events tend to just be these pitch fests, right? Where it just tends to be, you go, you spend money, and then you spend more money to get more access or whatever it is. And you're kind of getting sold the whole time, and the event really has no value. So I went into this a little bit skeptical. I went into this a little bit jaded because I've had bad experiences in the past. And I don't want to make this whole video about me vouching for the Elliots. I am going to give you legitimate value in this, but I felt like it's important. As a coach who's been in the coaching industry for 10 years, when I see somebody who's legit, I want to vouch for them, and I want to vouch for that. And the Elliots are legit. They are absolutely legit. Sure, they're brash. Sure, they could be aggressive. Sure, they do some outlandish things on social media, more specifically Andy, not necessarily his wife, Jacqueline or Jackie. But they are legitimately great coaches and great people. The vibe I got is they care. They wanted to provide value. They did provide tons of value. They opened up their home. Legitimately their office. They opened up their office, but they also opened up their legitimate home. We had an opportunity to get to go to their actual house, their residence, right? And these are things that, most coaches or big name people are just not doing. So really quick, I just wanted to vouch for them. All right, let's go ahead and get into the content here. So like I said, 5 things that they actually said that I took away that I was like, oh, this is really great. I need to share this with other people. And then 5 things that I observed just from being in the room. Okay, the first thing they said that I was like, man, I gotta share this, and this is gonna be great. Obviously, if you're watching this, you're a coach, you're a high-ticket closer. This is something that if you're not doing, you absolutely need to be doing, all right? So the first thing I wrote down here is data tells you what to train on and if your training is working. All right. So in order to be great at sales, we have to train, right? We've talked about this ad nauseum. We got to train. It's a repetition sport. Repetition, repetition, repetition. It's boring. It's monotonous. It's just like going to the gym. If we want to put on muscle, if we want to put on strength, if we want to improve our performance, we got to put in the reps. Well, the same thing is true in sales. All right. So we've established that. But the thing that they said here is data is going to tell you what to train on. So if you're not tracking your data, you have no idea what to train on, right? So if you look at your data and you see that your closing percentage is shitty, right? Then you can identify, all right, what objections are giving me problems, and then you can train on that thing, right? If you look at your data and your closing percentage is great, but maybe your upfront cash percentage is low. You're not getting a high amount of upfront cash on the call. All right, great. Well, maybe we need to work on that part of the script. Or maybe you look at your data, you see that your show rate is off. All right, great. We got to work on that part. We got to train on the show rate, right? Data tells you what to train on, but data also tells you if your training is working. Right? It also tells you once you've established, hey, I need to work on this thing, right? Then you can, once you start working on that thing, then you can watch the data and the trends to see if the training that you are doing is actually improving that metric, or if it's stable, or if it's declining, right? So that was a huge emphasis of the $10,000 that I spent. That was a huge emphasis of the weekend, that data is going to tell you what to train on and if your training works, right? And it seems to be a big part of what they are focusing on right now, is improving their systems around collecting data, making sure the data is accurate, making sure they're analyzing the data. They were heavy on the data. And as I've said, I've been a coach for many years. I've coached other people for many years. I've specifically coached coaches for many years. And I know that coaches suck ass at tracking data. You guys fucking suck. I don't know why that is. I don't know what it is, but you fucking suck at tracking data. All right, and if you're listening to this and you're saying, Chad, I don't suck at tracking data, I'm actually pretty good at it. Round of applause. You are ahead of the competition. But there is a large percentage of people that are listening to this or watching this that have never tracked a single fucking data point, right? And you're wondering why your close rate, you're not closing deals. You're wondering why you're not making the type of money that you want to make. You're wondering why you're not making the type of impact that you want to make because you're not closing deals. Well, it's because you don't know what the fuck is going on. Data tells you the story, and it tells you the true story. Your emotions tell you the fake story. Oh, I feel like my close rate is terrible. Or, oh, I feel like my close rate is great. You don't fucking know. It's not a feeling. Data is the only thing that can tell you the true story. All right, so track your data. Once you do, you know exactly what to train on and if your training is working. All right, moving on to point number 2. All right, point number 2, they actually talked about the tools that they use. All right, so when I say tools, I'm talking about softwares, I'm talking about AIs. Which ones are important? Which ones are they actually using? All right, so this is more so just, I'm gonna give you a list. All right, this is important, write it down. All right, so they use DataBox, data, D-A-T-A-B-O-X, DataBox, to track their data. All right, it sounded really cool. I haven't looked into it yet, but this is one of the things that I will be looking into. But the way that they described it is that, you could look at the dashboard, you could see as much data as you want to see, but it sounds like DataBox also sends you a summary, an end of the day summary of the most important data points, so you could just at quick glance see how your company is doing. And it sounds like it tracks a lot of this through AI. All right, so DataBox. The second one they use is Hyros. All right, Hyros, more specifically, they use to track their social media data. So what posts are actually bringing them in leads, which obviously tells them what posts to create more, right? If you know what posts are bringing you the followers, the likes, the comments, but more specifically the leads, the money, right? Then you can continue to recreate those posts over and over again. But they also use Hyros to track for their ads. Same thing, what ads are working, what ads are not working, right? Obviously, this is gonna cut time in half. If you're just guessing of what to post, if you're just guessing on what ads to create, then you're just shooting in the dark. It's gonna take you a lot of time to figure out what works. But when we have the data, we can cut that time in half. So Hyros is what they use. They also said Go High Level. So it sounds like they use Go High Level for their CRM. And then lastly, the last data tool that they gave was Attention.ai. So Attention, ATTENTION.ai. And what they use this for is sales call review. Obviously, they can't watch thousands of sales calls because they have a huge team, right? So Attention.ai will watch the sales call, will analyze it the way that you want it to be analyzed, and will print back to you a report on how that call went, where they could have improved and where they did great. And that's huge. I mean, like that's, if you're in sales, if you're in coaching, and you don't want to spend hours watching your sales calls, this is a great way to, have somebody monitor that. All right, so DataBox, Hyros, Go High Level, Attention.ai. Those are the tools that they used and recommended. Okay, the next thing they said that I took away, and this is going to be a leadership tip, which if you're in coaching, if you're in sales, you are in leadership, is be a Tootsie Pop leader. All right, be a Tootsie Pop leader. So what that means is have a hard exterior and a soft interior. All right. Andy made a joke that also it means that you taste good. And his wife was like, yeah, that's perverted. You need to shut the fuck up, basically. But hard exterior, soft interior. All right, what does that mean? Hard exterior, accountability, discipline, persistence, right? All of those more masculine traits, right? Drive, aggression, right? Hard exterior, gotta have it if you're gonna be a great leader. Now, they also said soft interior. What does that mean? All right, so they really said two angles here. One was lead with your heart. Have an open heart. A lot of leaders will close off their heart. They'll close off the things that they're feeling. They won't be vulnerable, which obviously makes them seem very intimidating, right? We've all worked for a boss who only has a hard exterior. They're very intimidating. Bosses like that, staff have a hard time connecting with them. Staff have a hard time coming to them and telling them the things that are going on in their business, which then in turn, the boss doesn't have all the information to properly lead the company, right? But also on the opposite side of that, if you're just a soft leader, you have no exterior, there's no accountability in the company, and the company goes awry, right? The company fails. So you need to have both. You need to have the hard exterior, but the soft interior. So point one of soft interior, they said, is have an open heart, right? Show vulnerability. The other part of the soft interior that they mentioned was it's not that serious and you shouldn't take it that serious, right? You should have core memories in your business. And by core memories, I mean having fun, right? Making jokes. They said a lot of the time they have a big prank culture. They're pulling pranks on certain staff members. So, just having fun, creating core memories, treating it like a friendship, right? Friendship in business. All right. So be a Tootsie Pop leader, hard exterior, soft interior. All right. Point number 4. This was a takeaway that is more personal to me, meaning like this is something that I feel that I need to improve, but I'm sure this is going to be helpful for you as well. All right. Successful people aren't shy. All right. So giving you a little context here, I wasn't always shy. All right. I feel like in elementary school, I was pretty shy, but middle school, high school, I was pretty outgoing. And then I feel like in my early 20s and now I'm 30, so I guess my early 30s now, I feel like I've gotten more shy. I've gotten more introverted. And what I mean by that is I can be extroverted if you put me in a social setting and I feel comfortable around the people. Like, I've had a couple of conversations with them already. I could be totally extroverted. But if I'm in a group of new people, I don't know you, I tend to be more shy. I tend to be more reserved. I tend to sit back, watch before I start showing who I am, really. I have a shell until I feel comfortable around you. And when he said successful people aren't shy, he was saying, successful people have a lot of relationships. They're not afraid to just go up to a stranger, introduce themselves, shake their hand, have a conversation. And this is definitely something that I think has held me back. I've watched a lot of my friends jump me in success because they're not afraid to communicate. They're not afraid to create new friendships. And for some reason, that's more difficult for me right now, is creating those new friendships. So that is something that I know personally I need to work on, and I need to continue to put myself in environments where there's new people that I'm interested in meeting and getting uncomfortable having conversation with them. So successful people aren't shy. All right, point number 5, is your content so what or me too? All right. This was something they said, and it was one of those things where it wasn't a main talking point. They just kind of threw it in there. And I was like, oh shit, that's a big one. One of the things, you guys may or may not know this, I've talked about it a lot. One of the things I'm trying to work on is building my brand, building my social media presence. And I thought this was I thought this was a tip relative to creating content that was really important. Is your content so what or me too? All right. Let me describe it the best way that I can. All right. So what would mean that they are scrolling through, they see it, and they say to themselves, so what? All right. And here's an example, right? If you're just posting, let's say, for example, you're posting something that really has no relevance, it has no value. It's like, I bought a new car, or something that's kind of a little bit more shallow, right? Somebody might say, so what to that? And just scroll right past it, right? There's no depth to it. It's kind of shallow, right? Like, here's another example. When you see somebody who's is kind of jacked, they just take a little mirror selfie. So what? I don't give a shit about that, right? But Me Too content has depth, right? You're telling a story. You've overcame something. There was some adversity, right? Maybe that person who takes the mirror selfie, maybe they tell the story about how, 5 years ago they were 200 pounds and now they're this, right? That's Me Too. That's something that's like, oh yeah, I relate to that and or I can relate to that. Not necessarily that I've lost 200 pounds or that I'm jacked now, but maybe I'm in the fat version and I'm like, shit, me too. I want to be that, right? So something that feels like you can relate to it. All right. So is your content, and I feel like this is a really good frame before you post a piece of content to ask yourself, which is this so what, or is this me too? And I don't know, I just thought that was really good. All right, we're gonna get into the next segment here. All right, so those were the 5 things that they said that I took away, and I took away a lot of things. I have a whole entire packet, but those were like the 5 things that I thought were like, these are really good. All right, now these are things that they didn't say, but these are things that I observed. All right, so number 1, they operate on a high fucking frequency. All right, they have high motor, high output, right? So our event was Monday and Tuesday. They had a separate event Saturday and Sunday. So they went Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, they had our event. Jacqueline was telling a story about how they printed the wrong booklet and they didn't realize this until the night before the event. So they had to go back, they pulled an all-nighter reprinting this new booklet, and then they hosted the event. And then I later find out that they had another event in a couple of days. Man, they were just cranking out work. You could just tell they have a high motor, high frequency. And I think that is just really important if you are gonna be successful. Sure, yes, you gotta focus on the other areas of your life, all right? And I've made the mistake where I just chase the dollar, right? But when you are focused, when you have your hours to focus on career, right? Let's say you're working from 9 to 6, you have a high frequency, high motor, right? And then when you go into the other areas of your life, the fitness, the family, the spiritual, high frequency, high motor. It just seems that in every area of their life, they operate under high motor, high frequency. All right, number 2, marriage matters. You could tell that they love each other. You could tell that their marriage is legit, but you can also tell that they do a great job working together. Obviously, they are business owners, and I'm not saying that you need to marry a business owner, marry your business partner, and that's what I meant to say, that they're business partners. And I'm not saying that you need to marry a business partner or your business partner. I'm not married to my business partner. My wife does her own thing and has her own business. But you could tell that the person that you marry matters, right? Jacqueline is very good for Andy. Jacqueline is a little bit more grounded and she holds Andy accountable, where you could tell Andy is more the visionary, right? He's more the running on emotion, visionary. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And you can tell that they balance each other really well. And if Andy had a terrible wife, he wouldn't be very successful or as successful. And if Jacqueline didn't have Andy, she wouldn't be very successful. So you could just tell, and this is one of those takeaways where it's like the person you marry really does matter. And you really need to think about, is this person, a good life partner? Not if this person fucks you good or you fuck and have great sex, right? Like, it's not about, are they hot, not hot? That shit doesn't matter, right? That's lust, right? Is this person a good life partner? All right, number 3, culture matters, people matter. We're in a day and age where AI, and we're in the very beginning of AI, but this is going to become a more prevalent problem where, we start to question how much people matter and if people matter. And being there, people matter a lot, man. Their culture is top fucking notch, but you could tell they bring in great people. They bring in people who care. They bring in people who are hungry. They bring in people who are high motor, high frequency, just like them. And you could tell that just being in that place, there is an energy to it, right? And that energy can only be created by people. I don't think that AI will ever be able to replicate the energy that human can give off. I actually don't think it ever will at all, right? AI is more systematic. AI is more robotic, right? That's the invent of AI, is to take that away from humans in terms of being the systematic and the robotic, right? Humans are designed to be more creative, creators, culture builders, people connectors, right? We're more emotional creatures, where AI has no emotion at all, right? So it reaffirmed to me, because this is a big fear that I've had, is that AI is just going to take over everything and humans are going to have no purpose on earth. I actually don't think that's true at all. I think that AI will complement humans, and they will do the systematic robotic things that maybe we don't want to do, or it can just do it better, and we will focus more on the culture, right? We will focus more on the creativity in terms of our human design and the purpose of being a human. So culture matters, people matter. All right, number 4. Be accessible. Like I talked about, highly accessible. I was able to have a conversation with Andy. They opened up their home in terms of like, hey, yes, everyone who's at the event, come over to our house. We're going to have dinner. We're going to hang out, right? Be accessible. I haven't met many creators or entrepreneurs who are this accessible, but it's clear that this is a part of their strategy. It's clear that this is something they care about, and it worked. It worked, right? And what do I mean by it worked? I am a believer. I want to be closer to them. I want to be a part of their culture because they opened up their home, in so many words, metaphorically speaking and actually literally speaking, to me. All right, so be accessible. It's really important, and it's a mistake that I've made in the past. With my previous business, I wasn't very reachable. I wasn't very accessible to our clients. And I did that because I thought I had to. I did that because I was told that as you grow a bigger business, you should be less accessible to your clients and focus more on the business. I actually think that's terrible advice. All right, number 5. And this honestly could be the most important one from like a sales tip. I know this is a sales show, or a sales podcast or show, I guess, if you will. But this one I think is the best sales tip. Courtship sales. All right, so this is a new term that I wrote down. I was never told this. I just wrote it down. Courtship sales, right? So what is courtship, right? In dating, you court someone, right? You take them on dates, you buy them gifts, you're nice to them, you give them compliments, you court them, all right? So I did end up purchasing their mentorship. I was courted to purchase their mentorship. Like I said before, a lot of these events are just about pitching. You go in, they don't provide a lot of value, pitch, 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 pitch. They're just pitching the shit out of you. Grant Cardone in particular. Now, Andy's approach, I knew I was being sold, but I liked the way I was being sold. So I had someone from Andy's team who sold me on the event. That person was at the event, and the whole entire time they were courting me. All right, what do I mean by that? Is, they at first had a conversation with me, we got to know each other. The next day when I went to the event, they handed me like this little pendant. They said, hey, I got this little gift for you, right? And then they also, they handed me a card later that day, and the card was an invitation to go to a room at the end of the event to talk to Andy. And then I went to the room and I talked to Andy. And then at the end of that conversation, obviously I'm getting sold and I'm in their mentorship, right? So it was very strategic. I was being courted. I was being given gifts. I was being told compliments. I was being treated hand and foot. I was being courted the whole time through. I was being wined and dined. I wasn't just being pitched. And I know that is old adage. I know that is like, oh, that's how you're supposed to sell, but not a lot of people actually do it. A lot of people just go for the, hey, I'm trying to sleep with you on night 1. I'm going to pitch you right away. And if you snooze, you lose. And that to me is just the wrong way to go about it. So my last thing that I observed was the courtship selling. All right, y'all, that's the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed this type of content, leadership, sales, if you enjoy hanging out with me and Granny's t-shirt, make sure you guys subscribe, give a thumbs up. That's how we grow the channel. I appreciate it in advance, and I'll chat with you guys soon. Peace out.